Hey buddy, Aaron here. Welcome back to another anime review. Today we look at episode 6 of Alderamin on the Sky. So, what's interesting is last week's episode was a flashback of, Ikta and Yatsuri's past as children and how they became friends as time went by. This week's episode was meant to further the story, but more so it's a very slow-paced episode because what it is essentially is I want to say world building episode. If you're fans of things that are anything long running show wise, you're used to building episodes where they just focus on teaching you the kind of lore behind stuff and the various characters behind it. And one thing was we meet new characters, we see maybe some drama that might be unfolding in the story later on, of course, but overall very slow paced episode. It wasn't bad by any means, it was just very slow paced. So if you're one of those people that really doesn't like these type of episodes, it might have been really kind of tedious for you, but otherwise perfectly fine episode if you do care about world building and want to know more about the characters. So anyways, let's get started with this review. So we have Matthew in the beginning, more so just talking with the nurse girl. I forgot her name. I cannot remember it for I remember every single character almost for the show except her name. I guess because she's not really shown that strongly, I guess, if that makes sense. But Matthew is talking about how he really wants to better himself as a soldier. He really wants to show that he can be even better than Ikta in many ways. And I think it's because of a little bit of jealousy and a little bit of rivalry that he's making for him and Ikta and all that, and Toraway, for example. And it's kind of sad in a way because I understand wanting to be better and want to do that. But I hope Matthew in the story, because like I said, I've never read the light novels or any of the source material that goes beyond this. But I hope he doesn't end up falling to to a darker side of the spectrum because characters like this in anime typically when they are trying to excel past other people, they do stupid things in the course of a series or a story. So I'm very curious how this is going to make him. Is this going to make him a better soldier, or is this going to make him do something stupid later on trying to prove that he's so much better than Ikta or something like that? Very interesting. Alright, so we also learned a little bit more about Henri, which is the character that is the professor that we saw in the flashback where Ikta was trained under him because, as everyone knows, Anari, I think his name actually was a scientist that sought asylum in the Emperor's area rather than doing it, anywhere else. He wanted to be there because he wanted somewhere where he feels he could use his science to make military aspect concepts, and they were willing to take him in. And we learned that really had a big impact on Ikta. When he was younger, this is the man that he wanted to strive to be like because he wanted his teachings and his beliefs and stuff like that. So we just learned a little bit more about that, and I think it was interesting because of how he sees them. Because, one thing that's funny about Ikta is that, he comes from one person, which is his father, who's a great general, and then meanwhile you have a scientist being someone that he looks up to as a role model, that he wants to learn his teachings and his beliefs and stuff like that. It's very interesting because military and science are always kind of, I think, at odds with one another. They're very necessary for one another. If you look at any military book, you could see that. But it's just interesting to see, Ikta, I guess, try to represent both of them at the same time in many ways. Anyways, we learned what the group's going to do now. They're going to be heading to Somin, I think it's called. And it's apparently a very Hickish-like place where there's not much going on there. It's, I guess, a borderland between a lot of things where you don't have to worry about, per se, any attacks because they are on good terms with I guess, the enemy that would be there and the natives of that area, but they are in that zone. So that must mean that they either kind of took over that land and maybe pissed off some natives, that's possible, or something like that. And we'll learn that my theory on this was actually correct when I thought about it, which was kind of funny, but they go into Somin, and nothing really happens from here on. It's just more comedic stuff. I want to introduce two characters that they talk about. One, I took a screen cap of this at the worst time. I didn't see his name even appear because of my brightness settings on my computer, so I missed out on his name completely. He is the actual lieutenant that's going to be instructing Ikta and his group of characters. So he's in charge of them essentially, but he's important already because you can see he has several things in this episode alone. And he's not an idiot. I'll say that right now. So far we've met a lot of lieutenants in the show and instructors and all that have not been up to snuff, I think, for what should be military purposes. I don't know. It's interesting. I think maybe they're trying to show that Ikta's so much better than these characters, but this guy doesn't seem like a complete idiot, so it's very interesting. We also see a scene, which I didn't take the whole picture of because there's a lot more to talk about here, but we see a scene between Denkin Hagarunaska, I believe is how he pronounces it, versus Yatsuri. Apparently, Yatsuri's family, the Igsdoms, what they are all about is having the two-handed sword weapon style. But for them to do that in the military, apparently, they must always win their battles. So, he challenges her to a fight, knowing full well, who she is and what she is. And, Ikta is telling the princess, who comes in and says, oh, this is garish that they're doing this and fighting and all that. And he goes, no, it's meant to show that that her family lineage is a lot stronger. They're superior to every other fighting style of the nation. So it's very interesting to see that. I thought it was kind of cool fight. It was very simple. It wasn't really per se anything worth, I think, taking pictures of. So I didn't do any screen caps of it. But she won, obviously. I mean, who was surprised by that? I don't think anyone watching this was surprised by that. Anyways, so the whole group of military units start walking up a pathway, and in the meantime, the lieutenant's talking about what they're going through. He's talking about how things weren't always that great here. Recently there was a lot more tense buildups and a lot of kind of these little small rebellions and small rise-ups from the natives and all that. And he talks about how it's, it hasn't been that bad, but he goes, he's doing something to prevent it. And that's when one of the students goes, well, aren't we spinning around the same area over and over again? He goes, oh, yeah, we're doing that on purpose. He goes, we're showing them our military strength. By numbers, he's showing them that, hey, listen, you got a small group compared to us with, hundreds of thousands of soldiers. You got, maybe your couple hundred or whatever they have. So it's very interesting. I think of right away in my head the Spartans, because people forget that, hey, small units could win battles too. So they got to really be, I want to see if this guy really knows what he's talking about, or if he's just trying to show strength when he really doesn't have any strength. It's very interesting. I do like, though, the one scene where he asks for Ikta, and Ikta's like, oh yeah, the girl that's in charge of his unit, which is really, he's in charge of the unit, but he makes her a secondary lieutenant type thing to it. She goes, oh yeah, he has a message for you that he broke military regulations by leaving the unit and going to so he stayed behind and put himself in detention, essentially, which is so fun. I was cracking up. I thought that was hilarious. That was probably one of my favorite parts of this whole episode. And second to the next scene, which was really cool, where we met an earlier character who was this young girl who was reading books at the time. And her story gets a little bit more put into the front when you see her being harassed by another lieutenant who is taking all the books. And Ikta comes in and says, hey, that's interesting. All those books are really, really expensive books. Like, I wonder why you'd be taking them. Maybe it's possible that you want to sell them to people, because most likely that's what you're doing. He calls him out on the key because he knows this guy's taking these books from this girl because they're worth money. And that's messed up. Listen, this is her books, or at least the whole unit's books, and here he's just taking them just because they fetch a nice price to, like, I guess, individual people and stuff like that. So he actually he leads them into a little trap where he goes, you have to be careful of insects. He goes, how do you think of bugs? And the guy goes, I hate bugs. They're not anything as powerful as humans or whatever. He goes, some stupid line like that. And he goes, no, yeah, but still, they're very poisonous sometimes. And he hits the side of a building when he backs up into it, leading a giant tarantula-like spider to land on the lieutenant's face and go into his shirt, which is freaking awesome. Ikta, definitely one of the best MCs of this year. Honestly, I have not seen another character that is cooler than Ikta. I'll be honest with you. That's just me, though. And we learn about this girl's name. I be honest, I forgot what her name was already off the top of my head. But we learned that she's like Ikta in many ways, that she loves science over military concepts, and that makes them, I think, that's going to make them probably close friends or probably another type of love triangle thing, because I'm thinking right now that Ikta is liked by both Yatiri and the princess, and eventually it's going to be the nurse girl, and then it's going to be this girl too, because I swear, they're not all going after him like a typical harem, which is awesome, so I'm not going to say this is a harem, but you could tell they all like him, so it's very interesting where they're going to go from this, but she seems like she could be an important character. Now, he is dragged away by the lieutenant, who finally comes back and goes, I'm going to put you in detention for a detention cell for a few days. And he goes, oh, I'm not going to survive. He runs away. But as he's running away, he stops at one particular cell and sees something inside that really, frightens him to a point. And he goes, what is inside there, Lieutenant? And that's what they don't say what's in there either. So I'm very curious next episode what was in there. Maybe a certain unit, a certain person. I'm very curious what that was. I'm thinking right now, my theory is that most likely it was one of the natives. That's what I'm thinking. But anyways, speaking of natives, we see a native clearly who is I think her name was Dono, at least. I think that's one part of her name. And Dono over here, till I know what her actual name is, it seems like she's plotting an uprising. That's what it is. She's talking about how they're going to grasp the land back from, the people that taken it from her. And that's very interesting. I wonder where that's going to go. Definitely goes into what I said earlier, which is very interesting. I'm curious. This is one thing I love about the show, because I do love, I guess, military type shows once in a while, and when they're done right, it always feels good to watch them. When they're done wrong, I'm like, I don't really care about them too much. Like, I've seen a lot of military type anime done in ways that aren't even close to even realistic or even close to being interesting, and this kind of bends the reality between them, because you have a little bit of kind of fiction, of course, but you also have a little bit of reality to it, I guess, realism to it. So I do like the show a lot. I really do. Also, I wanted to mention this just as a side note. I didn't take a screen cap of this, but I noticed this really weird. So those little spirit things they have that I swear to God, they remind me of Teletubbies, if anyone knows what that was back in the day. Those little spirit things are really like, I guess in this episode were used in such stupid ways, because in every part of this episode, all they did was pop out of the little bags on the side of the character's hips, just to pop out. And that's it. That was like the only time. I swear the artist for this just reused the same scene and just changed the color of these things. But that's all they did for this episode. It was really, really odd to me. I don't know why they did that. But yeah, that's my only criticism, I guess, for the whole episode, to be honest. But maybe also because it's a little slow paced. I guess that might also be other issue with it, I should say. But I honestly didn't have an issue with this show in general, so I don't care. I don't mind slow paced stuff once in a while. But anyways, I will talk to you later, guys. I gotta go run, do some stuff really fast. So have a great day, everyone. The whole nine. Hit the like button, subscribe, share, blah blah blah. Bye bye, everyone.